And anyway, the show's called Happy, and it's about it's an hour and a half on PBS. The film itself is like 75 minutes long, but they put some pledges in there. They want you to give them some money, which is not that bad of an idea. I know at first it seems like it is, but they can use it. So anyway, they were talking about happiness and how it works and why some people have it and some people don't have it and what's the deal. And it used to be thought that happiness was either, you were almost kind of like you were born with a propensity towards happiness or you weren't. And then people thought that was kind of a crazy idea, but now that's come back around, and through research they found out that about 50% of our ability to be happy is actually genetic. That about 50% of it is genetic. And then, of course, the other thing that enters into it is we have a tendency to think, when we're unhappy, we have a tendency to think that if only certain things would happen, then we would be happy. If only this, that, or the other thing would occur, then we'd be happy. And we also, if unfortunate things occur, we have a tendency to think that if only that bad thing wouldn't have happened, then I'd be happy. Well, it turns out that that's only worth 10%. The events of our lives are worth 10% in this whole scheme of happiness. Boy, sometimes it seems like it's a lot bigger than that. The thing is that it's just temporarily, when the events occur, the bad events occur, temporarily they are devastating. But we have a natural tendency to get past it very quickly. Sometimes we decide to hold on to it. And this, by the way, is our choice. So 40% of our ability to be happy falls within our own power, that we can do something about it. And it's not just making a decision, although that's part of it. We can make a decision. Okay, I'm going to, we could just say I'm going to be happy. Just, that'd probably give us about this much. I'm just going to be happy. But it turns out that there's actually things that we can do that will increase happiness and keep us in that spot. There's a tendency that we have, and it's got a technical name, but it's actually just getting used to stuff, right? We just get used to stuff. They did a study of students who were going to school in the Midwest and students who were going to school in California. And in the study, they wanted to figure out if people who were in California were happier strictly because of the weather, right? Just because of the weather. And it turned out that all the students thought, all of them, whether they were in the Midwest or in California, thought that they would be happier in California because of the weather. But when they really did some deep research, they found out it just wasn't true. And the reason that it wasn't true is we get used to where we're at. We get used to where we're at. And then there's all these other factors that affect our happiness in the moment. So just moving to California is not going to make you happier because you just get used to it. You just get used to it being like, I went to a meeting last week when I was there, and I came out of the meeting and I'm still remarking to everybody how beautiful it is. And a guy standing next to me said, "Yeah, another day in paradise." Obviously, he wasn't as happy as me about the whole situation. But it is something you just get kind of used to what's going on. So they said there's 12 things that we can work on within ourselves that will increase our happiness. That we can make decisions in these 12, and it's recommended that you don't just try to make a list of these 12 things and try to do all of them, all the time, but make a list of the 12, but I'm only going to give you one today. And then we'll go on with this and see what happens. And it may take me 12 times to give you the whole message. It may be less than that. It just depends on how it works out. But the first thing they said, the most important thing about being happy, was to be grateful. That in people who show the most happiness, they're the ones who are grateful. And gratitude is an interesting thing. Sometimes we've been told, actually many of us, I remember being told as I was growing up that I needed to be grateful for what I had because I needed to remember all the people who don't have anything. Right? And so in other words, it started out with a comparison between my situation and other people's situation. And we should be, I don't know, I'm sure somebody told you to clean your plate because they're starving somewhere. But so this idea is that we would then examine our lives, and so when somebody said, man, you better realize what you have to be grateful for, it may have been in the context of that comparison. Well, it turns out, and we'll talk about this in a later lesson, but it turns out that the comparison, making that comparison, is actually one of the things that takes away from happiness. Oh! So gratitude then needs to be generated strictly on what we are grateful for within ourselves, with no judgment or comparison with the state of anyone else, or I should say the apparent state of anyone else. So to be grateful for life, just to be grateful for life, to be grateful think about it, for goodwill. Somebody said to look on the bright side, to be thankful. But here was like something that was really important: to not take things for granted, to not take people for granted, and that's going to be like a big thing as we move forward with this. To replace the if-only syndrome in the mind, that repeating idea that if I had this or that or the other thing, to replace that with a sense of gratitude for what we do have. And it was very interesting that stuff, being grateful for having stuff, although it's important, we should be grateful for whatever the blessings are that show up, but it was like the lowest level of results as far as increasing happiness was the stuff itself. What was also very interesting is that they found out this getting used to stuff actually works with all of this too, because we think that when we get the new car, when we get the new house, that the happiness is going to come from that. And it turns out that almost immediately, very short period of time, you get used to it. And it's like, this is the norm. There's no more additional happiness being generated from this new thing, whatever it was, right? And then the eye begins to wander towards other new things, like the replacement, the bigger house. That, by the way, the guy across the street just got a better new car. You don't even have to look at the guy across the street. When you're driving, they'll be driving by you. That's been my experience. I'm driving a new car, and I look, and this guy next to me, and I go, oh, my goodness, I thought I was really doing something. To count our blessings and then report them doesn't just mean to count all the good material things that have showed up, but our blessings would be the people in our lives. Here's the top three, by the way. I'll give you the top three just to kind of get you thinking about it. The top three things were gratitude, having close connections with other people. That could be family, that could be friends, that could be a fellowship. This was like the number 2 most important thing: close connection with other people. It didn't have to be with all other people, although it turns out if it is with all other people, if you feel that way, you really are happy. But just that sense of close connection. And then the third thing, these are the 3 most important of the 12. The third thing was to be of service. And I thought, whoa, where have I heard all this stuff before? To be grateful? To be part of something greater than myself? And then to give service to it. How many of you know have heard it somewhere else too? So these were the most important three things. So this gratitude counteracts the if only. It gives us the ability to really feel this sense of well-being from the blessings in our lives. To report them. This is like a really important thing, it turns out, that to tell other people that you're grateful for them. Turns out it's really good for building the relationship too. To tell other people that when good things happen in life, to share that with others. Healthy, happy, joyous lives. And here's, they did this, they thought, well, okay, so you're supposed to notice when you're grateful. Notice when you're grateful, pay some attention to it and report it. And they thought, well, how often? How often should you actually look and see, what you have to be grateful for? And so they did a study, and they had people on one day, they had people write down 5 things that they had to be grateful for. And to then focus and give and allow the true appreciation of those 5 things to kind of permeate their consciousness. And then they had another group of people do it every day. Actually write a new list every day. It turned out that the ones that did the 5 on the one day, and then maybe through the week meditated on those 5, actually had a higher level of happiness than the ones that they told to do it every day, because it became a chore and a task, and it stole away from the process, right? So once a week. So just think about it. Once a week, you could have a day when you would do it, where you could just sit quietly and just allow it to come to you. 5 things, 5 situations, 5 people, however the mix goes that you have to be grateful for, and then throughout the week, just refer back to that list and allow yourself to feel good about it. So to cultivate, to savor life. This sense of gratitude, it's very interesting that it should do this, but being grateful actually bolsters our own self-worth. Being grateful for what comes to us in life actually makes us feel better just about ourselves in general. It gives us more ability to cope with stress. It actually encourages us to be more helpful. It helps us build social bonds. And it actually inhibits judgment when we begin to work on this, when we begin to work with this idea of gratitude. I just found the term here for getting used to it. It's called hedonic adaptation. Hedonic must come from hedonist, right? Hedonic adaptation. It just means you get used to the good stuff and it's not so good anymore. You need something else. So to journal, very important. To write down. Here's something. Here's some things we never even consider. To be grateful for the things you're good at. To be grateful for the things that you like to do. To be grateful for a place where you go when it's stressful. Someplace, and it could be that secret beach in your mind, where your secret place that you go to in a meditation could be a real place. To be grateful for that. To be grateful for something, and just when the mind starts working this way, to be grateful for something that usually you wouldn't even notice, that it would just slip past. But when you consider it, to think of how much you would miss if that situation wasn't present, or could be a person. To identify someone who loves you. To do this and to mix it up, to keep it fresh, because of that tendency to get used to stuff, to keep it fresh, to have gratitude in all areas. This is something I think is important, and I think it's one of the most difficult. I'll just tell you, it's difficult for me because I think people know, but they don't know, and that's to express gratitude to others. To actually say it. Not just, of course, when somebody does something nice and it's right there in the moment, most of us say thank you. But then to later remark about the gratitude. I'm thank you. Thank you. Remember when this happened, when you did this, I really appreciated it. Just to direct expression to another. To write letters. Okay, text if you want. It's okay. I mean, it's a letter, right? It's a letter now, but it's interesting how it seems like when people actually sat down and wrote letters with their hand, that they were more considered than. It just seems like it's like too easy to get those texts just flying out. So I would say that anything that you send in a text that has to do with gratitude, read it a couple of times before you send. Well, anything you send as a text, read it a couple of times before you shoot it out there. It could prevent a lot of problems. But to write letters and not even to deliver them. To think about this, to make this gratitude in us grow, we may consider in the quietness of our meditations, we may remember things that occurred years ago, and that some of the people involved aren't even with us anymore. To write a letter to them will increase this sense of gratitude. What the Course in Miracles says about this is that gratitude is an attitude. Oh, that's what the sign says outside. Attitude, gratitude. It's a key concept for making changes in life. And so if we're thinking that our lives could get better, that our life experience could improve. Now here's the interesting thing. As I went through all of these 12 things, and by the way, since I saw the show, I went out and I bought 2 books. I read one of them, and I'm halfway through the other one. I mean, I just dive in. And so anyway, as I went through all these 12 things, I found that in those 12 things, most of them, I have some tendency to do the things that were asked, but there was a whole bunch of ways to improve it, right? So as a result of me doing, I guess I should have known all along, but I found out from doing the research that I actually was pretty happy. And reflecting, most of the time, that's how I feel. But it was also very interesting that there were the blind spots that I have. Some were revealed. Some probably weren't, and you can help me with them later. But I saw places to improve. But so these all of these things that we're going to talk about over the next few weeks are areas that we may see very clearly that we practice them and that we are doing them. But we'll also see areas that we can do better. And but all of us, from time to time, we wouldn't be here if we weren't. I hate to say it. I'm just going to say it right out. We wouldn't be here if we weren't somewhat screwed up. And I mean be in this experience that we're having. So all of us are experiencing times when we would like changes in our life. And so if we want these changes, then we need to establish gratitude in our minds. That's a beginning. To start with being grateful for what is and what we have. This movement will lighten our way and make our path easier. When we are grateful for all that we see and all that we experience, without making a judgment about calling it good or bad. And here, so to be grateful for something that looks bad. Well, the only way we can be grateful for something that looks bad is to realize that the reason it looks bad is because there's a misinterpretation going on, but also to remember that however it looks, it is definitely an opportunity for good. It's an opportunity for growth. Not that the thing itself is good, but rather, now there's a situation in front of me. It's the Course says in one of the lessons that all things are echoes of the voice for God. So the interpretation of the sound is up to us. So if we can see, and the vision itself, what we see, if we can see past what's presented to the truth, that all things can be, as in the meditation, all things can be symbols for God, or they can all be symbols for love, or they can all be symbols for fear. Or we can mix it up, which is what we do. This is what we do. We mix it up. Some things we have no problem at all seeing it's a symbol for love. A lot of things we see as symbols of fear, and we go right down that path. What the Course says, it says, walk then in gratitude. And then it calls it by name. It says, the way of love. The walk of gratitude is the way of love, for hatred is for God.